On today's episode of Kult America, I'm in East Berlin to do a little sightseeing. Imagine that one day your government would build a wall between you and your brother, not for the purpose of keeping him out, but for the purpose of keeping you in. Perhaps that's an overtly obvious way to start my thoughts on East Berlin, but what I just said is so ludicrous that it perfectly summarizes my feelings on East Berlin. So I need to repeat myself. Imagine that one day your government would build a wall between you and your brother. The top of the tower actually had an interesting effect that the designers did not anticipate. When the sun was shining brightly, it formed a cross. Western politicians considered this to be the Pope's revenge on the Eastern Bloc, and it was even mentioned in Ronald Reagan's famous "Tear Down This Wall" speech. As a tourist in East Berlin, it's hard not to obsess over the idea that you're walking around of what, for lack of better words, used to be a cage, a human zoo, and I wonder, what really were the authorities trying to prove there, and to whom? Between 1945 and 1961, much of the GDR's population, the youngest and the best educated class, escaped to West Berlin. These escapes came at the risk of one's life, of being shot in the head, of being attacked by dogs, or maybe even being electrocuted by a fence. People escaped through subway tunnels, homemade tunnels, hot air balloons, and sometimes just by attempting to run across the border by foot. Imagine the desperation they must have felt. Desperation was an inevitable feeling because they were surrounded by a wall. The wall itself was over 155 kilometers long and had 302 observation towers with 20 bunkers guarded by more than 11,000 soldiers. In many places, the wall was accompanied by what was known as the Death Strip, a no man's land which varied from 30 to 150 meters in width. It was filled with guard towers, signal wires, barbed wire, or sand traps to alert the guards of any otherwise unnoticed escape attempts. About 50% of escapes were successful. During the wall's existence, approximately 5,000 people escaped out of an attempted 10,000 people who tried. Most probably, the successful attempts were successful because the escapees bribed the guards. So what could I conclude from my visit to East Berlin? Walking freely is not necessarily a right that people have. People alive today remember a time when seeing their own family was impossible because they lived behind a wall and a crazy ideology. From a tourist perspective, Berlin is a nice place to visit. You see sights you recognize, you eat food that you've heard about, and you forget that at one point in time, millions of people lived in dignity comparable to that of a zoo animal. And I just strolled around like nothing had ever happened. I wondered what the people from Berlin feel when they visit the east side of their city. So it's hard for me to draw a meaningful conclusion from visiting this place that was a human jail. But I couldn't help but go back to a quote that I heard from John Morland in his song Losing Sleep Tonight. And if I were to ask humanity one question from the east side of Berlin, it might be a quote from that song. Are you worried that you're happier at war than at peace? It's almost difficult to believe that this place was once the harsh divide between the East and the West, that the inhabitants here would literally risk their lives to escape it, or that guards would literally shoot people who were trying to escape. I recommend that anyone who visits Berlin definitely see some of the sites that we visited in this video today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye.